to week 9 of DMD 320 application and mobile design. How are you guys doing? All right, so in week 9, right now, you guys should be knee deep into the brainstorming part of Project 2, Simplicity, Simplicity, Simplicity. So the majority of this week on your own is going to be set aside for researching, planning, and brainstorming ideas for Project 2. As you remember from Project 2, there was a lot to read and absorb in advance of really designing anything. There's the opening article from Walter Jacobson. There's all the discussion about the theme of minimalism that we are going to be doing, and to do some background research on that outside of the world of web design. Look at architecture, look at other areas of minimalism for inspiration, as well as sort of the history of Apple computers and how they have incorporated minimalism and simplicity into all their design choices. You also have to make sure that you are aware of and pretty well versed in the Apple Human Interface guidelines that we went over last week. By now, you've already turned in your design brief and you've chosen your client, either Howe Furniture or Trundle. So that's easy enough. And of course, you've turned in the first version of your mood board by now. Now, I say first version, of course, because you will have gotten some feedback by now on your mood board, or you should be getting some feedback really soon on your mood board, as well as, of course, your client choice in relation to the mood board. And so you want to make sure that you go back and really incorporate that feedback that you got into your researching, planning, and brainstorming. Before we get into the wireframes, I really want you to make sure that you fully understand what you're going to do and you have a really good plan for the design, okay? So a lot of time is going to be spent on that this week. By now, you should be pretty well versed and comfortable in using Adobe XD, and so we're not really overcoming software issues. We understand the basics of UX and UI design because we've done it on a number of projects, and so that should not be super difficult for you to focus on. So instead, we really want to push you in a design direction that's going to be unique to you. And this gives you an opportunity to really put a lot of planning into this. So break out the sketchbooks and really get down to thinking about it. So in the meantime, while you're doing that, we are going to spend some time this week taking a look at the American Disabilities Act and its impact on mobile design. So there are two things for you to read in advance, and this is going to be our major discussion this week in class, okay? So be prepared to talk about this in class. So the first link here is all about the American with Disabilities Act. This is a great article called What is Considered a Reasonable Accommodation. It's important to understand what this is all about because for two reasons. Number one, as designers, we have a responsibility to make sure that the widest audience possible can access our content, and so that includes Americans and all people with disabilities, not just Americans, of course, because it's a worldwide web after all, but of course we are discussing the Americans with Disability Act, but I like to think that we should apply these standards across the board, regardless of who we're designing for. So it's important to understand where this comes from, number one, from that point of view, and number two, this actually is legal precedent. In recent years, there have been lawsuits against various owners and designers of websites because they were not accommodating to people with disabilities. And so it's important to make sure that we're doing this because these sorts of perspectives have been part of architecture for a very long time. Buildings and owners of buildings and architects can be sued with regard to the accessibility of their buildings, and they have a responsibility to be accessible to everybody, and websites are really no different. And since we live in a mobile-first world right now, we are applying this to mobile design specifically. So read through this, and that'll be part of our discussion this week. And then this one here, as ADA turns 30, tech is just getting started in helping people with disabilities, and this is another great article that is useful and is very timely. This just came out this year. And I love the part about just getting started because that is entirely true. Web design has been a thing since about 2000. Mobile design has been a thing since about 2008. And so we are just now in 2020 really starting to think about accessibility from a mobile perspective for people with a variety of disabilities. And lots of companies have been working on this, but we're going to talk about this. And so make sure that you're well informed and you have an opinion on it because we're going to talk about it. All right, so that's your main piece of research and getting ready for this week outside of putting a lot of work into your planning, brainstorming, and research for Project 2. Make sure that you're really immersing yourself in some good inspiration. We're going to talk about where your inspiration is coming from in relation to your board, as well as what you're going to be doing soon. Okay, so your homework, of course, for this week, and we'll talk about it later in the week, is then based on the feedback that you get and your further research and planning to go back and fine tune your design brief if it needs it, and your mood board, which probably will need it. All right, so go from there, and you guys, I'll talk to you soon, and we'll talk about this very soon. All right, have a good day.